if you're considering that it may be time for downsizing and having a little less maintenance, a little less space, you're going to really appreciate our episode today. My name is Keri Shull, and I'm here with Greg Mena, and we're going to be talking about senior living communities surrounding us right here in the DMV. So Greg, I'm so excited for you to be here today. Can you share with our listeners a little bit about what makes you the expert in this arena?
Oh my goodness, Keri. Well, I appreciate that's quite an accolade. I wouldn't consider myself an expert, but I would say that I've had a good amount of experience and I've had the chance to work with a good number of the senior communities in the area. When it comes to the decision to move to a community, it's a decision that's impacted by many different things. It's probably a stage of life type of thing. Usually it's around, I'd like to have a life that has a little bit more luxury, a little bit more of the small elements taken care of. And so that's what a lot of communities can provide, and they can provide it in Arlington, Reston. Winchester has some amazing ones, even out that far into Loudoun, but we're right here in Arlington. And that's a growing opportunity. So there's a great opportunity for you to pursue many different options, and that's something that we can chat about today.
Sure. Okay. And let's imagine, for the sake of this conversation, that the people watching right now, they haven't even really started to explore. They're just thinking maybe they're ready for a change. Can we just walk through some of the options that are out there and how they would even approach thinking about downsizing?
Absolutely. So that process, it is a process, and that's the most important thing to understand. In the number of clients that I've had the chance to work with, and I really mean work with, I came into this world. So as JK Moving is the company that I work with. And the last 3 years, I've been in a specific focus in helping to serve folks that are moving into communities. And the process must be considered as a process. And when I say that, and I repeat it, I mean to do so. And that's because it's a step-by-step process. It's a much better thing to engage on your own time and with your own research. And then when you actually want to make the move and go through the process of what some would call a downsize. I and some of the friends I have that work with different senior communities, we like to call it a right size. Yeah. Because as life moves along, as you're at a different stage in your own life process, the right size is where you want to be. And if you start now and you start thinking about where would I like to be, and that could be physically, geographically, where would I like to be? If you're someone that's in Arlington and you'd like maybe something a little more like that, again, that is an option that exists. But you also have to think, what would I like my life to look like? How would I like my day to flow, right? Yeah. And different communities offer all kinds of different focus in what they're emphasizing as part of the lifestyle. And that's an important, that word is the second part. So your geographical location and then your lifestyle. Sure. Those are the things to really consider.
Okay. So let's imagine that, someone watching says, I want a lifestyle similar to what I've experienced in Arlington. I'd love you to share a little bit about a specific community that has some of the walkability and is more similar to Arlington. And then I also want to talk about how they would go about getting detailed information about some of these communities so they don't feel overwhelmed. They feel like they have all the details.
Absolutely. That's a great question. So to consider, where would you maybe have a lifestyle that was more similar to Arlington? Immediately, probably 5 different communities come to mind. Fortunately, 3 of them are they're run by an excellent company. The same one. One company that's doing some amazing work in creating a true community feel, and it's in more walkable areas, is a company called Silverstone. And their communities, they have Fairfax, they have Tysons, they have Alexandria, and those would be the Landing in Alexandria. And then you have the Trillium in Tysons. I'm sure you've heard of these. Yeah. And you've probably had clients that moved to these. And then the Providence in Fairfax. And the reason I mention them is because they're coming at it from a walkability standpoint, right? The Trillium was built at the borough in Tysons, right? So you are immediately next to great conveniences of a high level. and you're actually a high rise. So that's also a neat and more unique in the space is to have things above 10 floors is a neat and unique opportunity.
So can you share, just because I think there's some of our viewers may not have even been to that area, can you share a little bit about some of the shopping and restaurants and like what is exactly there? If they wanted to walk, what could they get to?
Absolutely. So the borough I find fascinating because I was born in Leesburg, then Sterling and Great Falls, and now I live in McLean. I joke that I just made my way down Route 7 and Georgetown Pike, but I'm a local in the truest sense. And the borough is right there in Tysons Corner, and there was just offices for many years. And now it's anchored by a Whole Foods. It has an incredible new style of movie theater. It has shopping, restaurants. You have some of the really neat brands in the local area now have restaurants there. And so you have immediately, you can walk to that and then walk a little bit further and you're getting over to Tysons Galleria. You're getting into the thick of some of the best convenience and interesting entertainment in the area.
Absolutely.
And you're actually right next to Capital One Hall also, where we saw each other yesterday, but that's neither here nor there. And that is really growing in the entertainers and the opportunities in this area. Capital One Hall is becoming a great thing, and that's all right around the corner.
There's like amazing live music there.
Yeah.
So my thought here, one of the things I was hoping you would share is just Whole Foods, because so many of the locals here in Arlington love the fact that there's a Whole Foods right here, and some of them don't like to cook. They tell me, oh, well, we just like to walk to the Whole Foods and get a salad, or so you have that same amazing walkability, but there's actually even more there that is just at your fingertips because it's a condensed area. Where here in Arlington, there's Ballston, you're kind of spread out along the corridor a little bit more. So yeah, that's amazing. And let's just talk through, if somebody were to buy in that community, let's isolate the Tysons Corner location. What are the price ranges?
So as you can imagine, it is a pretty big range. And if we were speaking specifically about the Trillium, that's a rent. So you don't have a large upfront purchase fee. You have a membership fees, and I would be very careful to speak to the specifics because I don't work on their team, but I work very closely with them. But you're probably in a $7,000 to $12,000 range, somewhere in there is where you'll find monthly service fee. So that's a very different option than a purchase community. Right. Yeah. And one of the main, one of the finest operators in the United States and I've had a chance to work with them very closely for years now, is Erickson Senior Living. And they're well known. They run an amazing communities. They're very focused on the resident experience, especially all the way through continuing care, life plan. Those are two words that would be properly used. Yeah. And that's a buy-in. So you're purchasing. It's obviously a refundable deposit, but it's a purchase. So that's another small difference in the process would be whether I'd like to rent, to lease, or whether I'd like to purchase, right? There are great considerations there, and that is actually a really nice connection to your role in the process, right? Yeah. Because those are significant considerations when you're selling. Maybe it's your home of maybe it was a downsized home. Maybe you've been in it for 10 years, or maybe it's been your lifetime home and you've been there for 40 years. Right. Right. So you have a lot of equity in the home. Now you're going to sell the home. And that decision of wealth, right? Your own wealth that you've built up, and how does that impact your future? Yeah. Right. That's a crucial part of the decision, because then how do you conduct that process, right? How does it go in terms of speed? Right. Yeah. And how does that relate to your decision to either buy or rent? And so that's an important part to consider as well.
Well, and I think you mentioned earlier the timeline and the process being such a critical component. I've worked with a lot of clients that are downsizing over the years, and the pace in which they feel like they need to do that varies tremendously. I've had some clients that we've worked together for 4 to 5 years as we kind of shed items and thought about the transition. And then I've had other clients that fell or had a medical change that made them feel like they really needed extra help. And a lot of times I've had couples that I've worked with where one of the couple needs additional support and the other member doesn't feel like they can provide that support physically anymore. So if that sounds like something that you're going through, evaluating whether you would want to purchase or rent is important. And having just gone through this with my in-laws, I think the idea of renting feels counterintuitive to many people because their whole life they work so hard to be able to own. Right? So I think I would encourage you, there's fear that comes with that because it's, well, wait a minute, how long would I be able to afford that? And that feels scary, right? So when evaluating the decisions and you're talking to clients and they're deciding, should I rent or should I own? How are they evaluating that? And what advice would you give to people listening right now?
That's a great question. The decision to rent or to own, it's multifaceted, right? To immediately state that it's important to know that it's multifaceted. And each of these communities have, especially very well respected operators of communities, they have usually pretty stringent or at least in-depth financial considerations and evaluations to make sure that this is going to be a good fit, right? Good operators, they're going to make sure it's a good fit for both.
Right.
So that's a very important step to take, and typically that's involving your financial advisor, right? That's a crucial part, and probably your real estate agent if you have someone that you've trusted and you've worked with for years, like you have, like clients do with you. That's very important. And what I would say is, you said you've been working with them maybe for 4 or 5 years. That is the way to do it. So that is what I would say is before everything, that would be the approach to take, is to start now, way before you think that you might even be interested in that kind of decision.
I completely agree.
To start now.
Yeah. So I started writing a book called The Upside of Downsizing Young. And it is because I've had so many traumatic experiences where a client falls and then can't go to their bedroom anymore, right? And then it changes from being a really empowered, almost exciting life change to something that it's necessary to happen and it has to happen quickly. So a couple of the things on the real estate agent side that I do to help, some of our clients want to know, well, how will we evaluate what the timeline will look like? Or they have areas of disrepair in their home, right? They might not have been able to keep up with the maintenance of the home. They may feel like there's a leak in the basement, and that's normal.
Which we all have.
Yeah, there's always going to be maintenance in any property that we're evaluating. But on our team, we look at the multiple options. And the good news is there's so many options that are available to you. We look at, okay, if we sold the home as is, what would the timeline be to sell it? And we're excellent at predicting that. What is the absorption rate? Which I'll explain what that means. It's just if we evaluate properties that are like yours over a year's time with the market going up and down, how many of them sold in the full year? And then we're figuring out how many homes are absorbed on average per month in that pocket, right? Once we understand that, we can look at how many active homes are on the market. That gives us a really solid, confident way of approaching the home sale. If we see, okay, 3 homes are being absorbed per month and there's 6 homes on the market. We know we need to look closely at the 6 homes that are on the market to ensure we're one of the first 3 that are absorbed in the first month, right? So we use a lot of statistics-based analysis, and we're able to have a lot of predictability in the price that we'll get. So our accuracy is above 99%, which gives our clients such confidence. So then when they're evaluating that decision, we're looking at it and we're reevaluating it every month as they're getting closer to the decision. And sometimes those months turn into years and we're still looking at it just to make sure we're on the same page.
And that's a great, forgive me to interrupt you, but that's a great connection to a simple illustration. And I will reference Ericsson again because I simply know them so well. I acted almost as a part of their team for almost 3 years. and they have a very interesting model where it's essentially you have 60 days to settle and take keys on your new home. So that in and of itself tells you a lot of things right there, especially as the agent, as the realtor. It tells you, okay, there's the timeline immediately, right? But the interesting thing about that is if you step back into I'm thinking about this 4 to 5 years in advance, you can be preparing and then you're ready to pull the trigger, right? Because 60 days, it's not a lot of time, as you know. It's not a lot of time. It can feel maybe like a long time to someone like you who sells a home in, a couple of days, but it's not a long time when you're talking about your life.
Right.
Your life of maybe 40 years in a home, your memories, and it is real value. That's real, right?
Yeah.
That's a real thing, and it's wonderful. And now maybe a life event, or maybe you just now you'd like to have that. It's a decision. Well, great, but it's a real thing now. And so if you have been working as in your own home to figure out, okay, you go through kind of some of those downsizing, the great tips and tricks of, do I need it? Do I love it? Do I use it? Those kinds of questions. And you start to do that on your own. Then when it is time to pull the trigger, and maybe you have somebody like Keri in your corner who's saying, okay, I know we're probably going to take this amount of time to sell your home. Then you're ready, right?
Yeah.
Now, Ericsson's, they're a bit more unusual in that they actually they'll have a promissory note, which is pretty neat. So then they kind of can give you maybe a little bit more of a 30-day bridge if the equity in your home is going to be helpful for purchasing your new home. So that's a bit more of an unusual situation. But traditionally, you're probably going to have 30 or 60 days. And when you're talking about a community where you're leasing, that's typically 30 days. An amazing community that I've had the chance to serve in depth, the Carnegie in Gaithersburg, Kisco Senior Living. They've had a wonderful opening, and now it's 30 days. Or maybe at the beginning you had a little more time, right? And now that launch has happened, but now we're going to do 30 days, right? And that's fine, but that's a quick timeline. 30 days is a quick timeline. It's not a lot of time to even plan your move when you're thinking through a life, right? And you've got your kids, you've got maybe even grandkids. Hey, do you want some of these things? And on average, usually the items, unless they're really neat, probably folks are not gonna take them. Maybe they've started their own lives. So you really want to start maybe that 4 years in advance and start thinking about your plan. You don't have to execute it, just start thinking.
So it's interesting because I watched my mother-in-law do this and I thought she did a phenomenal job. She contacted, I think it was Purple Heart, but she had them come every week.
Yeah.
And so because she had it scheduled, she felt there was an obligation to have items ready to go.
I can't believe you said this. Sorry to interrupt. That is what my mom has been doing since probably for 20 years, so way before.
Yeah.
So she's really on the ball.
She's on the ball. She's doing it in advance. For my mother-in-law, they've been thinking about it, but from the point that she decided, okay, this is real, we need to do it. And my father-in-law had a stroke, so it was brought on by a medical emergency. So she said, okay, I need to be really focused on this. I need to do it. Well, she ended up giving away things that where they ended up they needed. So she went a little above and beyond. She gave away the kitchen table.
That's really unusual.
And then it's
I have to say.
very unusual. She gave away the kitchen table, and then there's this beautiful space for a table, and she has to buy a new one, right? So I would say just the more you can go down the path of exploring the floor plans and the options and the view and the ambiance and how you imagine spending your day and the lifestyle and the involvement in the community. Because the social involvement that comes in some of these communities is so exciting. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I just mentioned the Carnegie a moment ago, and I mention it because I've had a unique opportunity to be involved before they opened and work with their move-in coordinator, Mayela. I love Mayela. She's a wonderful person. Because I had last year conducted an entire building opening, essentially 90 apartments in a 90-day period. That's a serious process, but it began 18 months before, and it was a long process. And one of the crucial parts about that, to get to that fun end result, the lifestyle, because you said the word floor plan. That is a crucial part.
Yes.
So that's something that I learned from some great people in the world of moving and senior move management, that the floor plan that you're maybe thinking about, right? Maybe it's what's your want to have, right? Maybe it changes as you go along, but what's your want to have, and to look at specific communities. Mm-hmm. Okay, I like that model. And then to have someone work with you to create a layout, to walk through your home, measure the furniture, and then create a layout. This is actually a service I perform at JK Moving. I go to folks' homes and we walk through that process, right? And it's kind of simple, or it is amazing what it does. And this has nothing to do with me selling this. I'm stating it's an amazing process to watch. And now I think about it all the time. It was never something I thought about, is okay, that you now have boundaries, and you have to think about those, and what will your life look like? What's most important? So the earlier you do that, you start thinking, and maybe you don't give away all of your furniture. That I have never encountered a single floor plan appointment where all the furniture was gone and everyone was ready to move.
She thought, I'm not going to have a kitchen and a dining room. I'm going to have one or the other. So I better just get rid of this kitchen one, because and then lo and behold.
But I veered off a little into floor plans because I spend so much time in them. The lifestyle, the Carnegie had an event last Monday, and they said we'd like to invite partners, and then it turned out it was all these couples or folks that just live at the Carnegie. They said, well, there's a party going on. We're coming to the party. We don't care if it's people that might move in, prospects. We're coming to the party, and just had a neat chance to talk to a lot of these folks that now they're having, a amazing, 5-star meal. They have a happy hour. They're basically just living. They're living the way that they'd like to, and they're not worrying about all kinds of things that come with the challenges of having a home when it gets harder to manage the home. So and they were excited. I mean, they were ignoring me. They just came over to get a little treat. My former business partner made fancy pastries. That's what they wanted from me. But they're like, we're having a great time, man. We don't need you anymore. So it was great. It was amazing to see. So that lifestyle, it's crucial, right?
Well, and they have chess club and bridge and
everything you can imagine.
Tons of games, and it reminds me, I went on semester at sea, and it was like this pod of people that I got to hang out with and I became so close to, and it was life-changing, and it's giving people that opportunity to have connection through all of these social things that many times there's a lot of isolation when you're living in a large house on your own. It's not the same as having this sense of community. And so when I'm talking to some of my clients and friends that have made this choice, they're busier than they've been in years, and they're having way more fun.
And you know what? That made me think of something. The reason earlier I mentioned Winchester, I mentioned that's town because Westminster Canterbury, Shenandoah Valley, that's a unique community that is more in the scenic realm, right? It's in Winchester. It's beautiful. And the reason I mention is because you might have the interest in something that is a bit more scenic. Maybe it's in more of a town rather than a city, right? And some communities will have villas, or they'll have standalone cottages, right? So if you're someone who you'd like the benefit of being around people, and you like fellowship, you love getting to know people, and you want to continue doing that in a deeper manner, maybe. But you also, is there the opportunity to maybe have something a little more? There are communities that offer that, right? So that would be most important, is to define for you, what do I need to have? What is it that's going to give me joy? And then to say, all right, I'm going to look into the options. Just go. They will gladly host you. Have happy hour events, whatever you'd like. They'll host you because they'd like you to join. Right. So if you explore them by actually just going and visiting them, checking them out, and seeing where is the exact, because there is a needle for you. You can thread it. You can find it. You just have to look at them.
Yeah, and get more clarity on what it is that you want. So for someone who's watching this, that maybe one of the two is having a little bit more medical challenges, how do they get support at some of these communities, and what does that look like?
Right. So the support at a community as you go along in life and maybe reach a different stage in your health, you want to be in a, as I'd mentioned, a continuing care, a CCRC or a life plan, right? Because you go from independent living, right? That's where the only real difference in your life now is that you got a lot more friends around you and you don't have to cook as much, right? And you're still eating really well. Then to assisted living, right? And assisted living involves various elements of care and help. And then as it might present in life, then you'll have memory care, you'll have nursing care, you have kind of that continuum, right? The continuing care. So you want to look at each operator, each type of community, and understand one of the most respected in the region. They're Baltimore based, but Brightview, they're a wonderful operator. Their teams are wonderful people. Mike Reed is kind of been the director over launching different communities in this area. He's just he's a great man, a wonderful person to interact with. And I think to answer your question kind of in a sideways manner, I think there can be a branded statement or a list of things provided, services provided. But what's most important is the feel of the people. So you need to go and you need to get a feel for who are the teams that are running this community. Who are the teams that are in charge of looking after it, of bringing new folks to the community, and then of serving them in various contexts. That would be, to me, that is the most important question to answer. Or who are the people that you feel most comfortable? I think these people are going to provide a wonderful experience for me that I'm paying for, right?
Right.
I think that is. It's just like a restaurant.
I was
going to
say
hotel.
a chef. It's
right.
like a chef.
You have to find out who's behind it. What are the ingredients? And the teams are the most important. I've gotten to know and work with so many. Really, they genuinely love what they're doing, and they want to serve. They want to provide a great experience. It's to find the teams, and then when that matches with the most important priorities to you, then you've probably found a good fit.
That's awesome. So, final piece of advice: if someone watching this wants to understand what are the steps, they're just starting out, they haven't been to visit the communities, how do they set that up? How do they approach that conversation? And I would say, I'll insert my opinion. The first step is talking to a real estate agent, because if you were talking to me, Greg is one of the people that I would introduce you to, right? And actually, before I go into my final question, can you explain, when I'm introducing you to someone who's in this situation and we're thinking about selling their home, the different options and why you're such a trusted partner to our team?
Right. So the process, it immediately engages several things. Obviously, the sale of the home, and then it engages what are we going to do with the items in the home, right? Yeah. And so that then kind of branches into multiple decisions, but most importantly is just to start, okay, we have things, we're going to keep some of them, we're probably going to not keep the others, right? And so then would I like to try to sell them? Okay, maybe. Let's bring in someone who understands that, and that is their focus, and they'll tell you, and they'll be straight up. If they're good, they'll be straight up and they'll say, if it's really heavy, it's probably not as valuable. If it's a large armoire, it costs money to take it somewhere. It's more difficult for someone to pick up. If it's small, and it might be even more valuable, right? So they'll have simple guidance, and then they'll just tell you, right? That's to sell. If it's to donate, then there's most likely a partner who will find a way to help you with that process. We work with multiple. We worked with Habitat for Humanity for years, and we work with anywhere that you'd like to bring your things. Our company would gladly bring them. And then on the end of actually organizing and downside, if there's need for that, if you actually need physical help to do that, and sometimes you just need to think it through because it's a big process, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? That's the saying, and that's real. So it's just starting, and there are great move management businesses, downsizers, organizers. There are several in the area that are excellent. Yeah. And so at our company, we like to bring to bear anything you'd need. And then obviously, JK is one of the most respected moving companies in the United States. And we can bring to bear exactly how that move needs to happen. So it's finding a team of people that are going to take care of you, and then seeing if they do, right? And then, all right, you're doing a good job, great. I need something else from you, right? Or I need this thing. Or now my daughter, she might want something, and she lives in Florida, and there's 3 or 4 pieces that she's got sentimental value to, right? And we'd say, great, no problem. We can take them down there. We go to Florida every day. So you want to find partners that can take care of the elements that you want taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the summary that I'm hearing is really you're going to put the items in their home into buckets. And a lot of the clients that I help, they have sentimental value with their furniture. They have sentimental value with the things in their home, and they feel like they want it to go to somebody who needs it if they're not going to use it. So what I love about how you approach the process is you have partners like the Habitat for Humanity and other partners where they can say, let's go ahead and, that armoire, you're right, it's heavy. Let's go ahead and donate it. Let's donate these couches that are no longer going to fit. Or, you know what, I'll keep the kitchen table because that's going to fit nicely in the floor plan that I like. But the dining room table, we don't need to have a dining room table and a kitchen table right next to each other. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And you're able to do it in phases. And so sometimes clients will say, well, should we keep our furniture in the house when we're selling it, Keri? And I think we want to evaluate that on a case-by-case basis.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times you want to get rid of almost all of the furniture and keep bare bones so that the house looks really clean and really big, right? Less furniture helps to make it look larger. And it allows the buyer to emotionally connect with it as their own instead of as your home, which is what you want because that emotional connection is what makes them pay more money, right? My job is to give you the path to make more money. So sometimes what we'll do is have our pile that we're going to donate. We'll have our pile that we're going to take with us. We'll have some of the sentimental things. And we may decide to have an initial phase where Greg's team will come in and declutter. They'll take all the personal items that aren't needed. They may take some of the clothes. You may donate some, right? But it's going to mean that you're not responsible for doing those things on your own. And the clients I find that are able to handle it the best just get a little more support instead of trying to do everything on their own, which feels so overwhelming, which some of what my mother-in-law did, I mean, there was she nailed some things, but other things, at one point she tried to take the closets out herself. And I called her and she's laying on the couch and has like a black eye. I'm like, what is going on? And she's like, well, I just wanted to take it out and it didn't work and it hit me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, can we please have
your mother-in-law, not your mother?
My mother-in-law,
she was going for it.
She was going for it. And she lives in Florida, or you would have been helping her because I didn't have the same partner there, right?
I mean, that's just a physical thing that there are people that can help with that.
And you don't need to be doing everything on your own. And so I think what it does is it takes away the elephantness of it and makes it bite-sized. We're going to label it with stickies. We're going to figure out the colors, and then we're just going to simply make the decision on the timeline. And there's something that's so freeing about that. So I think a lot of times there's dread, but then once you get past the dread, there's actually a lot of excitement. So, okay, now for the steps, if they're saying, okay, I think I'm ready to consider this, maybe one of you is saying that and one of you's not yet. Go with the one who's saying it. If you're hearing this and it's both of you, you know which one I'm talking to.
Every floor plan appointment or lot, that's often what they'll say, we know you're not a marriage counselor. And I say, you're right. I'm just here to measure things.
Well, and I actually feel like my job is to point out the normalcy of the disagreement. It's very normal.
Of course.
And typically, there's different feelings, right? And so just trying to understand the perspective of your partner and the stability and security that everyone's looking for, right? And then just leaning into getting more clarity about the options. A lot of times just the knowing provides stability and security that there is the right fit and that it's not going to be a really rushed decision. So the more you can investigate, you can make it fun. You know, the more you can investigate upfront, the better. So if you're watching this and you have questions because you're thinking about choreographing a move, absolutely reach out to Greg. We'll put his contact information below. All of the communities that we've talked about today, we're going to include links in the notes so you can go check them out yourself. And if you're looking for someone to come and really evaluate your home and make sure that you're not pressured and you have time to make these decisions, you just want the education on what it would be worth, what you would have in your pocket when you sold your house, I would love to support you in that process. So thank you so much for joining us today, Greg. Thank you.
Absolutely. A pleasure. Pleasure.
Okay.